realized that soil is way more interesting than I gave it credit for. And yeah, then I just started realizing how much we didn't know about it. And then I got motivated to try to figure out this whole puzzle of like what lives in the soil, why is it important, and try to make people care about it because it is so important.
I know a lot of scientists are also always advocating for diversity. And we even see that with diversity in terms of humans. We want the world to be diverse, different colors, different race, different people, different levels, whatever, genes. Yeah, in summary, diversity. So for soils, how does the diversity relate to health? Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk. Again, I am so excited to host our guest for this episode, Dr. Lauren Alteio. In our previous video, she shared with us her journey through graduate school and also starting her PhD at a young age, some of the difficulties that she had to deal with, and obviously some of the things that also kept her going, the people that helped her in her journey, and some of the things she also did personally to help her in the journey. So if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend you watch that episode because it is going to inspire you a lot. And if you know someone also enrolling in her graduate school at a young age, make sure you share that episode with the person. So today's episode, we are going to talk about Lauren's research on soil microbial communities. Welcome again, Lauren.
Hello again.
Good. For our viewers watching this episode, how would you define soil microbes? And what role do soil microbes play in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so microbes are basically any creature that you can't see with the naked eye. So this includes bacteria, fungi, and protists. And so, yeah, basically any creature that you can't see. It also includes viruses. So there are viruses that live in the environment that don't cause harm to human beings. And also giant viruses, which are like the size of bacteria and can infect other microorganisms. And for your second part of the question, yeah, this is a really huge question, but we know that all these microorganisms are important for keeping soils healthy and for keeping our atmosphere healthy. And so they're really important for nutrient cycling. So having enough nitrogen to keep our crops growing, and also breaking down dead material like carcasses and leaves and plant material that fall to the floor. So they're really important for the world's health.
Thank you for sharing that. Science in itself is such a broad field, and I am always fascinated about the different researches people are doing all over the world. And they're all great. We enjoy all of that. I'm curious to know, what was your motivation for specializing in this particular field of science?
That's a really good question, because when I was first starting out, I swore that I would never study soil because I didn't think, like, who cares, right? It's not that interesting to look at, so you can just kind of brush it off. But I wanted to study science because when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents in their garden, and I really liked being around different plants and learning about gardening and also composting. And so, yeah, I thought I wanted to work with plants. And then I did an internship in my bachelor's, and I realized that soil is way more interesting than I gave it credit for. And yeah, then I just started realizing how much we didn't know about it. And then I got motivated to try to figure out this whole puzzle of like what lives in the soil, why is it important, and try to make people care about it because it is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. You already mentioned when you were defining soil microbes and also telling us their importance, you mentioned that there are a lot of them. And I know there is so much biological diversity in soil. Why is that so? And what are the factors that drive biological diversity within the soil?
Yeah, so one of the major things is the structure of the soil itself. So we have different scales that we can think about soil, like from a whole forest, if you imagine it that way, down to a really small aggregate, so a cluster of different soil grains. And so all these bacteria and fungi and everything live within this really complicated kind of maze. And so then this maze of soil makes like little hideaways for all the organisms to live. And so they have access to different types of nutrients and different food sources. And all this separation allows them to kind of diversify. And yeah, so yeah, the spatial separation and also the food sources that they can use allow different organisms to develop and persist.
Great. I know a lot of scientists are also always advocating for diversity. And we even see that with diversity in terms of humans. We want the world to be diverse, different colors, different race, different people, different levels, whatever, genes. Yeah, in summary, diversity. So for soils, how does the diversity relate to health? Is there a way that you link diversity, biological diversity within the soil to how healthy the soil is?
Yeah, so we're trying to do this, and that's kind of the underlying reason why we do these soil diversity studies, but we're not quite there yet. We still don't know all the organisms that are there and what they do. But what we do know is that having more diversity, so more organisms that kind of even do the same function, is important for maintaining health. So if we have 10 species that do nitrogen cycling, that's better for the whole ecosystem, because if one of those organisms becomes extinct or gets wiped out of that ecosystem, we can still cycle nitrogen, and that's how we can keep our ecosystems healthy.
Great. Can you also take us through how your work on soil microbial communities has evolved over time? Have there been some transitioning and some other ways you have been able to look at research on soil microbial communities? Let's say doing field work versus using some computational tools to analyze or answer questions on soil microbial communities. So like, how has your research evolved over time?
Yeah, so I kind of do a little bit of all three. So a little bit of lab work, a little bit of field work, and a little bit of computational work. And so, yeah, usually the way it goes is we go out to the fields and we collect samples, like soil samples from the forest floor, which is where I mainly work. And then we also look at what's around. So we learn about all the trees and the other organisms that are there. And then we do most of the work in the lab. So extracting DNA sequencing, maybe some culturing of different microbes. And then once you get all the data, you do a lot of computational work. So spending a lot of time looking at large data sets, plotting things. And so, yeah, I like that part of the job, that you can do all three of these things. You get to go out in the woods, you get to play in the lab a bit, and you get to also look through all these large data sets and learn about what's actually going on.
Great. So I know you love cell microbes because that's what you work on, and you have done this for a number of years. What would you say is the most interesting or surprising thing you have learned so far about cell microbes?
Yeah, that's really tough. I think for me, the thing that fascinates me and keeps me going is that we still don't know very much. So with every discovery, you realize that there are at least 10 other discoveries waiting to happen. And soil microbes are like a big mystery. And so, yeah, I like that we're sequencing new organisms, that we're growing new organisms in the lab, and we're learning new ways to domesticate different microorganisms in the laboratory. And it's an exciting, evolving field.
Great. So you also work on giant viruses in soil. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so this was kind of one of these unexpected twists in the data that I was working with. So we basically sequenced soil using a new method that we developed, and we just tried to look in the genome data to see if these giant viruses were there, because we saw them in water samples, and so we wanted to know, are they in the soil as well? And so it was a complete surprise that we were also able to find them there. And then we tried to classify which viruses they are and a little bit of what kind of functions they have. So that was a complete surprise and very interesting to find out.
Awesome. So do you have a favorite soil microbe? And what is the biggest fun fact about soil microbes?
Yeah, whenever people ask me this question, I think about actinobacteria, because I think everyone can relate to this one. So this whole group of organisms, there's a specific group of species that produce a molecule called geosmin. And so when it rains, if you smell the air after a rainfall, and it has like this very interesting smell, this is geosmin, and this is from actinobacteria. And so I think it's just fascinating that, yeah, if you really stop and think about the world around you and take it in, it's the microbes that are responsible for doing things like this.
Awesome. That's really exciting to listen. Thank you for sharing all these wonderful facts about soil microbes. We are going to round up the session, but before that, I have last two more questions for you. And the first one is, what would you want us to take home about soil microbes? What is the message you want us to carry along to friends and families about soil microbes?
Okay. Yeah, I guess the most important thing is that don't follow your passions, and don't discount things like I did when I first started, saying that soil is so uninteresting, because there are interesting things in every field of science, and you just have to be curious enough to kind of figure out which direction you want to go in.
Great. Lastly, what are your future goals, if I'm permitted to ask? And what are some of the things we should be expecting from you in the near future?
Yeah, so I'm a postdoc right now, and I have been for 2.5 years. So yeah, I'm gonna continue to be a postdoc for a few more years, but hopefully I'd like to write some of my own proposals to get my own projects going.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm working on kind of under other people on their projects. And so I'm starting to develop my own ideas about experiments and things I'd like to do. So that's my next step.
Awesome. Well, we wish you the utmost best as you continue to do your postdoc and look for other, like explore other opportunities of interest. We know you are going to do great. And so we do celebrate you for the great research that you're already doing. And yeah, for your input in encouraging other young ones and helping out with them also achieving their dreams. So a big thank you, Dr. Lauren Alteio. So this has been an incredible session with Lauren. Until our next video, let's enjoy science together. My name is Emelia, and I remain your host. Thank you.